This is Doug DeMuro, and today I want to talk about the weirdest new cars on sale today. Two reasons I want to make this video. Number one, I made a similar video to this like 4 years ago and it blew up. And number two, I think part of the reason that it blew up is there has become this thought in the automotive world that like the weird low volume stuff is not going to be made anymore. The Murano Cross Cabriolets and the Aztecs, you're not going to see those cars anymore because that's just not how the industry works anymore. And I totally disagree. There are still some weird, low volume, bizarre cars that in 20 years we're going to look back on and say, what the hell was that? There are still those cars on the market, and today we're going to talk through 7 of them. Before we get started, are you ready for your next cool car? Sell your enthusiast car on Cars and Bids. Trading in your car to dealers means you aren't getting market value for your car, leaving you with less cash for your next fun car. Just look at our recent sales of these cool cars compared to current trade-in value. This is a trade-in offer, and this was the Cars and Bids result. This is a trade-in offer, and this was the Cars and Bids result. This is the trade-in offer, and this is the Cars and Bids result. Get started now on carsandbids.com. Sell on Cars and Bids and join the best community to sell your enthusiast car. Okay, so weirdest new cars on sale today. We begin with the Acura ZDX. This is one of the more bizarre new cars on sale today for a wide variety of reasons. But let's begin with the fact that the ZDX came out as Acura's mid-size, fully electric luxury SUV for the 24 model year. It was the first electric Acura. It had all this promise. And then it was canceled summarily, quickly, after not that many sales. And the few sales that they did have were almost entirely based on heavy incentives. Now, it was only canceled recently, late in 2025 here. However, the ZDX did not come back for a 25 model year. What happened was they made 24 models and they were going to take 25 off because there was not a lot of demand and they had unsold inventory, and they were going to return for 26, but then the car was canceled, and so all new Acura ZDX models are 2024 models, and it only lasted for 1 model year. There are some cars that are big failures that only last for 1 generation. The ZDX was such a failure that it only lasted for 1 single year before it had to be canceled. Now, that alone makes it a little bit of a weird car, especially because I think that the sales figures from this time period are probably going to end up being under 20,000 total units, which means very rare. And obviously this isn't a car people are going to preserve. There's going to be attrition, and within a few years, you're not going to see these on the road at all anymore. But the other thing that makes the ZDX weird is that it was based on the Cadillac Lyriq. Honda has not yet developed a full EV. And so in order to enter the EV world, they decided to partner up with General Motors. And so the Chevy Blazer EV is reworked to create the Honda Passport, and the Cadillac Lyriq, which is an electric SUV, is reworked to create the Acura ZDX. So not only do you have this abject failure of a car that lasted for 1 single model year, but it's a Honda that's based on a General Motors vehicle, which is really weird. And it gives you some vibes back in the 90s when Honda didn't have an SUV developed yet. And so they went to Isuzu and made the Honda Passport, which was a twin of the Isuzu Rodeo, and the Acura SLX, which was a twin of the Isuzu Trooper. It really has vibes from that era. So the ZDX, super low production, GM twin, very strange. And of course, the other thing that's weird about it is there was an original Acura ZDX like back in 2009, which was also a weird car that didn't sell very well. And then they come out with this one, this newer one, which is also a weird car that didn't sell very well. So now you have 2 generations of Acura ZDX, both of which were complete and utter failures. But this newer one is maybe more bizarre. Just because it's this GM twin built in super low numbers for only 1 year, you really don't see that kind of thing happen very often. Okay, next up in terms of weird cars that are currently in production, how about the Cadillac Celestiq? I recently filmed a video with the Celestiq, a full review, which I have coming in about a month. And that car is unbelievably impressive. It is, if you don't know, it's Cadillac's full-size luxury car, and it's intended to like return Cadillac to the standard of the world, which is what their advertising slogans was throughout the 50s. It really does that.
It is an incredibly, incredibly luxurious, fantastic car. It also has a starting price of about $400,000 for a Cadillac electric luxury sedan, which is actually a hatchback station wagon, not a sedan. And so that's kind of a weird thing. The car itself is weird. It has this bizarre profile. I think it looks really cool, but it certainly looks different and interesting. Very, very strange car. So the reason I have this on here is because I have a sneaking suspicion that the Cadillac Celestiq is not going to be a huge seller. Although I think that it absolutely deserves to be competing with Rolls-Royce and Bentley in terms of the quality, the way it drives, the way it feels, the way it looks. $400,000 is a lot of money for a Cadillac, and I don't think they're going to have an easy time finding a lot of buyers for it. And all electric vehicles depreciate very quickly, but I have a suspicion that this one's going to depreciate even quicker, to the point where you're going to see these on the used market in 5 or 8 years for $60,000, $70,000. But it is a very unusual thing. The fact that these will even make their way onto the used market, the fact they're even making their way into the world today at all is very weird. I mean, each car is hand built. They're probably only going to build a couple hundred a year, maybe only a few hundred total production. This is a very unusual, very bizarre car from Cadillac, a hand-built $500,000 luxury car. And it's certainly going to be a strange one. It is a strange one now, and it is going to continue to be more of a strange one as the market continues to, as these start to hit the used market when you see them for sale. Okay, next up, weird new cars for sale today. This next one might actually be the weirdest car on this entire list. The Honda CR-V. There is a hydrogen version of the Honda CR-V that is on sale. It's called the CR-V Fuel Cell. I think technically it's called the CR-V FCEV for Fuel Cell Electric Vehicle. And it's got a $52,000 sticker price, which is pretty pricey for a CR-V. And it has a full hydrogen powertrain. Now, hydrogen was thought of as a possible, technology for powering cars maybe 10, 15 years ago. It had some real backers. Over the years, it has not been particularly beloved, and not a lot of automakers have adopted it. With that said, a few brands have built kind of low volume hydrogen cars like the Honda Clarity, and the Toyota Mirai, of course, is probably the best known one. But there's also a Honda CR-V that is hydrogen powered, which I had absolutely no idea. Though there's the Hyundai Nexo as well. But there's a Honda CR-V that is hydrogen powered. No idea. Absolutely no idea. And Honda says it's only going to build 300 of these per year. So the Mirai is pretty rare. You see them in California regularly, but elsewhere it basically doesn't exist. The Hyundai Nexo I see on the street here and there. Hydrogen cars are just tremendously rare, very uncommon. The fact that they did a CR-V hydrogen, and they kind of slipped it in. I've never heard anybody mention this. I've never heard any knowledge that this car is on the road at all. But indeed, there is a full hydrogen CR-V. And if you want to be an adopter of hydrogen technology and you think that that's like a futuristic cool thing, or if you can just get a great deal on this car, because hydrogen cars have typically been offered with amazing bargains, Honda's got a hydrogen CR-V for you, and that will certainly be viewed years down the road as a very unusual car, and a car that I think a lot of people will either forget or never even know about at all, and maybe even say, no, there was never a hydrogen. You'll hear stuff like that. But indeed there was, and it is very, very uncommon. Okay, next up, weird cars that are on sale today. How about the Hyundai Ioniq 5N? So the Ioniq 5 is Hyundai's all-electric kind of crossover hatchback. I think they call it a crossover, but it's really more of a hatchback, and it's a really good car. Great interior room, great use of space, very reasonable, affordable, good electric range, good performance. The weird thing, though, is that they have a full high-performance N version, which has some crazy stuff, including a big rear wing and front splitter and diffusers and all this side rocker panel fast stuff, and it has 640 horsepower. This is an unusual vehicle. To make basically an enthusiast version of your electric hatchback, which couldn't be further from an enthusiast car, with a $68,000 sticker price. It is unbelievably fast. It is actually a lot of fun to drive. It is a really exciting car, but it's very odd. And even here in Southern California, which is kind of the EV hotspot, and SoCal is like the automotive enthusiast hotspot, I have only seen 2 of these privately owned on the road, because there's not a huge crossover between enthusiasts who want to spend $68,000 on a new car and the Hyundai Ioniq 5 owners, right? Like this is usually a pretty disparate group here. But nonetheless, this car is out. It does exist. And if you want a hot hatchback that's full electric, it's actually a pretty compelling one. It drives really well. It's fun. It's surprisingly good. It handles well. But I just think it's going to be an extremely rare, low production car that we are not going to see very many of. And it will go down as like a rare, quirky, bizarre car from this era. Even though it has the really cool like electric car shifting, which is kind of a neat feature of it, it's just not it's not a demographic that I think is particularly interested in cars like this, and it is very strange that it exists at all. And I think they're definitely having trouble moving them and selling them to people. But if you're in that minority market who's interested in this car, it is a pretty appealing one. It's just strange. Okay, next one on the list of very weird modern cars. This one is undoubtedly one of the weirdest modern cars, the Mazda MX-30. Now, unlike some of the other cars on this list, like the Hydrogen CR-V and the Ioniq 5N and some of the ones coming later, this is not just a trim level of a weird car, which can be a weird car itself, like the Murano Cross Cabriolet, but this is a weird car all unto itself. The Mazda MX-30 is, I guess you could call it a compliance car, which means that it was built in order to comply with regulations. In this case, the regulation was that some US states require, in order to sell a car, you also have to offer an electric vehicle. And so Mazda came out with an electric vehicle, the MX-30, even though they weren't really wanting to. And the result when you come out with a product, even though you don't want to make that product, is that the product is never very good. And that was in fact the case here. The MX-30 was this bizarre kind of ugly two-door SUV with like a rear half door, and the range is absolutely terrible. It only does like 100 miles on a full charge. And yet despite that, the performance is also terrible and the price is also surprisingly high. And it is just a very not great car. And as a result of that, it is a car that is not selling particularly well. In fact, I am reading now that it is already off the market after 2 model years, 22, 23. Apparently it was sold through 24 in Canada. I see them occasionally on the road here, but even when this car was made new, it was clear that it was going to be a rare, low volume, weird car that in the future we're going to look back on as like, what is that thing? Totally bizarre. And for people who say, this is a good example, for people who say that, oh, no, in today's world where manufacturers are building at bigger scales, they can't justify making a super weird, low volume, quirky thing. This is exactly a super weird, low volume, quirky thing. Just a very bad car, a very ugly car, and a super low volume car that is going to be thought of as just really, really a strange vehicle. As life moves on and as electric cars get better and better, people are going to look back on this and say, what were they thinking? Which honestly, I'm kind of wondering today. Okay, next up, 2 more cars on my list of the weirdest new cars you can buy. Next up, this is a very good one. The Nissan Rogue Rock Creek. So this is, if you don't know, this is an off-road version of the Nissan Rogue. Now the Rogue itself, not weird at all. It is Nissan's kind of regular compact crossover. They sell it in big numbers, popular vehicle, all good. The Rock Creek is the off-road model, which is odd because certainly nobody has ever in the history of time wanted to go off-roading in their Nissan Rogue. And yet Nissan has come out with this Rogue that has like all-terrain tires and a few other upgrades, like it you know, the grille is different and it's got like a roof rack on top and it's got like, it looks like it has recovery points and it's got some of these like improvements to make it off-roader. Although it's worth pointing out, I've learned that the Rogue Rock Creek has the same ground clearance as the regular Rogue. So it's not dramatically better in terms of capability. And it also doesn't offer skid plates to like make sure that you don't hit stuff when you're off-roading. And that's probably because Nissan knows that no one will actually ever take this vehicle off-roading. It is just kind of an absurd thing that they even created it. And one of the things I've always loved about the name, you know, all these off-road vehicles are being made of regular SUVs, the TRD Pros and the Z71s. And they named this the Rock Creek, which in my mind is a park in Washington, D.C. It's like the largest park in the Washington, D.C. area. It's like their Central Park. And I've always felt that's the appropriate name. And instead of like a real off-road, name it after like a public park, which is the kind of off-roading that I think you would be doing in a Rogue Rock Creek, like driving over soft grass. Needless to say, this is a very unusual car to create an off-road version of a just boring compact crossover and to not make it dramatically more, actually more off-roady, just to sort of, it's more cosmetic than really hardly anything, which adds to the quirk factor and the weirdness factor. And of course, they will not sell many of these. It will not be popular, and it will go down as a very weird car. We're going to look back and think they made an off-road version of the Rogue, and indeed they did, although they didn't make it very well. And finally, last weird, quirky car that is on sale today, new. This one was clear to me it was going to be a weird, quirky car from the moment I first found out it existed, and that would be the Toyota Crown Signia, which is essentially like a station wagon version of the Toyota Crown, which is sort of like a kind of large luxury sedan. Toyota pitches the Crown Signia as an SUV because SUVs sell and station wagons don't, but dimensionally it's more of a station wagon. And I think the market has kind of realized that it's more of a station wagon, which is probably preventing it from doing well in terms of sales. It's actually a pretty good vehicle. It's a hybrid. It is, unlike a lot of the other cars on this list, which are bad vehicles, this one is actually pretty good. It's a hybrid. It's luxurious inside. It's got a nice interior. It's nice to drive. It comes standard with all-wheel drive. The problems with this car are Toyota already makes a wide smattering of SUVs, and at this price point, which is $46,000 to $50,000, the Crown Signia is just not anywhere near as practical as the other ones. So for that same money, you can get a Highlander, you get more space, you get a third row, you get more power, you actually probably spend a little bit less. You can also get a Sienna if you want even more space. You know, the Crown Signia is a two-row, essentially a station wagon, doesn't sit up all that high, not really going to be a hit with American consumers. Now, this is a global vehicle. They're selling it in other markets. Other markets might prefer it versus how we are perceiving it in the States. But generally speaking, it is not a particularly successful or particularly popular vehicle, and that does not surprise me. You know, all-wheel drive hybrid station wagon for $50,000. That's not really going to be a particularly hot selling situation. And this replaced the Venza, which also was not a particularly hot seller. Also an all-wheel drive car, kind of fit into this market segment, sort of like this price point, you know, generally speaking. But the Venza was also not hot, and I'm not surprised at all that this car is not either. It's a good car, again, drives well. It just doesn't really fit with the taste of American consumers. Not surprised it's not selling, and I think this is one of those cars in 10, 15 years, again, we're going to look back on and say, that was weird. You never see them on the road. You never saw them when they were new. Surprised they even made it. So there you go. Those are weird new cars. Don't ever listen when people tell you there aren't weird new cars for sale anymore. There still are. There is still automotive weirdness to be had in this world, and those are 7 examples of some of the weirdest new cars on sale today.